right, audio is up, picture is up. Yes. Audio is up. The picture is up. Let's see. We're gonna get started here, but gonna have to get slated in, of course. Let's get the date right. Have a little bit of fun here. Oh, look at that. Isn't that interesting? All right. So the light's on. That's a crucial aspect of this production. Here we go. Scene. What is this? This is computer. The computer scene. You know, everything that we do around here is on the first take. So, you know, nothing is scripted, and you know, just to keep the realness of it. All right. Let's just say me, and today's date is September 3rd. All right. So let's get into it, shall we? 109, computer. Roll 1, take 1. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of my video. Time is always of the essence, and I don't want to waste any of your time. And I want to do something that I love to do, which is talk about myself. How narcissistic? Yes, I know, but hey, we live in a society of narcissism. But am I really being narcissistic when I'm just sharing what I learned and sharing my journey in order to find like-minded individuals out there? That's really what I want to do. I want to get your ideas and your input, you know, to potentially collaborate in the future. So this isn't just me spouting off at the mouth. This is a desperate cry for help from someone like you out there. Okay, enough of that. Let's get into it, all right? I want to talk about some of my favorite topics. Yes, they include Ethiopia, the numbers 10 and 9, and Nipsey Hussle. But instead of focusing directly on those topics, I want to do a roundabout sort of discussion here. Of course, time is of the essence, so let's talk about my travels over the last 13 years. But specifically, I want to explain to you why I traveled to Korea, why I stayed there for as long as I did, and what happened to me thereafter when I traveled to Saudi Arabia, and what did I learn about Ethiopia throughout that process, and maybe I'll touch on Nipsey and 10-9. So if you sit and watch this video, that's what I'm going to cover, all right? And I'll try to make it interesting, so stick with me, okay? Let's get into it. We're going to start with traveling to South Korea. I'm going to sit here and use the computer, as you can see. Alrighty, pull up a picture, YouTube, Wikipedia. All right. Come on, picture pop up. That's going to slow me down if I have to sit here and wait for things to pop up on the computer. Did I prepare? Yes, I prepared some other slides, but that one I did not. Look at this. I pulled up a picture of the Korean flag and I lost it. There was some advertisement here, so forget that. All right. I'm from Los Angeles. I'm from Los Angeles, California, and Los Angeles is home to the largest or the greatest population of Koreans, the most densely populated, the densest population of Koreans outside of Korea. So the greatest population of Korea outside of Korea. There it is. Got it right. Okay. So there was very little wiggle room. There's no way for me to get away from the Korean influence in Los Angeles. I mean, I'm talking about having classmates who were Korean, talking about learning Korean martial arts. I'm talking about when my grandmother needed a new car, she bought a Hyundai Sonata or Hyundai, depending on how you pronounce that. And yeah, Korean culture and Korean influences were all around me, and I couldn't escape them. And, you know, also Samsung and LG make some of the best technology. So if I wanted a nice television or a smartphone, it was either a Samsung or an LG that were really competing for, you know, my business. Of course, I didn't have the money at that time back in the day, so I did get a Sony, Japanese brand. But anyway, so South Korea was a very big part of my life. Oh, and of course, look who it is, my aunt. My aunt in 1988 won gold medals in Seoul, South Korea. I can't forget about my aunt and her accomplishment. My goodness. When I was studying Taekwondo as a young kid, Taekwondo or Taekwondo, depending on how you pronounce that, the Koreans pronounce it as Taekwondo, but you've heard people, especially Biggie Small, said Taekwondo and everything else that he said about it. All right. I was studying that martial art, the Korean martial art, when I was a kid, okay? And my instructor told me one day, go to Korea to study martial arts, or just go to Korea. And I thought, wow, okay, yeah, maybe one day I will. But I had no idea how I would get there. Cut to, I was 27 years old in Los Angeles, and I was out of work, and it was time for me to go to Korea, because there are plenty of jobs for English teachers in South Korea. Even to this day, there are plenty of jobs in South Korea for English teachers, all right? And that's what I did. Now, I went to Korea with 3 goals. The 3 goals included becoming a Taekwondo master, because I thought if I'm in the country where the martial arts comes from, I'm gonna improve my martial arts skills, right? Okay. I'll just hit this right now and tell you immediately, that's definitely not what happened. I discovered that although in Los Angeles, there are grown men and women who go to Taekwondo classes in Los Angeles to, you know, stay fit, I did not find that same group of people, that same market for Taekwondo. Taekwondo basically was little league, and there was no major league. So the only people going to the Taekwondo as the schools of learning, schools of discipline, were children. And it was a sort of rites of passage for the children in South Korea. That completely blew my mind, because as a 27-year-old who had moved to South Korea, I wanted to learn Taekwondo. And I said, doggone it, I'm going to be in class with, you know, elementary, middle school, and high school kids. And that's it, tops. And that was the reality. So I did not continue to study martial arts in Taekwondo, in Korea. All of the older people were working, and the men who I would imagine were Taekwondo masters in Korea, they were taxi drivers and alcoholics. It's the truth. All right. I wanted to become fluent in Korean because as a martial artist, I thought that it was a good idea to become fluent in Korean, the language of origin, of the country of origin, where the martial art came from. And to impress my Korean masters, I certainly did that for my black belt test here in Los Angeles. I learned about 10 different phrases. 안녕하세요, 안녕히 계십시오, 안녕히 가세요, you know, 피곤해요, 배불러요, 감사합니다, 미안해요. Okay, you get the idea. These are all phrases that I learned, and I had given myself a pretty cool introduction into the language so up until that point. So when I moved to South Korea, I did continue to improve my Korean, but my experiences with Korean were limited based on the fact that I am okay, and Koreans are very, very conscious of, oh yes, very much so. It's a very different experience than in America, but in Korea, yeah, there were some limitations. So no matter how much I desire to speak Korean, the Koreans were very were very eager to speak to me in English and assumed that I spoke in English. And that really was a battle for me to, to get around. I wanted to interact with the Koreans in Korean, but they, responded in English. And so that broke down my learning. That broke down the communication. Well, communication occurred, but I didn't get much value out of that interaction from my side because I wanted to learn their language. But anyway, but I was able to improve my Korean because I was invested in learning their language. So I've learned quite a bit. All right. And then finally, I wanted to travel. Of course, I was traveling from Los Angeles to Korea, but I wanted to travel even more. And over the course of nearly a decade in Korea, I traveled to 7 or 8 countries in total. Let's see. I was always flying home to Los Angeles. So that's America. I was living in South Korea. Anytime I had a headache, I wanted to go to Japan. I was very impressed with the Japanese, and I was very appreciative of their acceptance of me as a, Japan is all right with me. I went to Taiwan in 2012. Something miraculous happened in 2015, and the amount of travel just spiked. And I traveled to China, Peru. I had a layover in Canada. So throughout the nearly 10 years that I was in South Korea, I traveled to 7 countries in total. Oh, I did have layovers in Panama, so that could actually, it was probably eight countries that I got to. So eventually, when I left South Korea, because I hadn't become a Taekwondo master, because I wasn't fluent in Korean, and I really thought that I should have been. And I mean, literally, Korean is easy to learn, and if you devote enough time to it, if you devote 1 year of study at a university or on your own, you can vastly improve your ability to speak not Spanish, but Korean in 1 year. Okay, it's surprisingly easy. So I thought I should have been much better. But after 10 years, because I hadn't met that goal, that imaginary level, I was ready to leave Korea. And then finally, because I hadn't traveled, okay, in 10 years, I had only gotten to 8 countries. Now, you might be saying, well, that's good. But no, I was working alongside colleagues of mine who were traveling to 8 countries in 1 year, or over the course of 2 years, 6 months. They would travel to 5 Asian countries on one vacation. So I was very much an underachiever, okay, in my assessment. All right. So after 10 whole years, I really wanted to get out of Korea, especially because my bank account did not reflect, really much of anything. I was spinning my wheels. Life in Korea was great. Parties, high speed internet, and the quality of life is excellent. Okay, primarily because they took care of you. They put you in a home or in an apartment that was very nice, and you didn't have to worry about anything. Just do your job, get your paycheck, pay your bills, and just keep doing that. Rinse and recycle year in and year out. And that's pretty much what we did. But I wasn't saving enough money, and it's too much. So anyway, I was ready to get out of Korea, and the opportunity to travel to Saudi Arabia arose because I had worked in Korea for such a long time. I was able to parlay that experience into a job in Saudi Arabia, which I did. Now, I left South Korea in 2016, and when I did this, I came back here to America, and well, let's say in 2016 I left South Korea for the last time. Okay, I haven't been back. All right. I was driving for Uber, and one of my passengers was this young Korean woman. Okay. Now, I was frustrated because I hadn't achieved what I thought I should have achieved in South Korea. So I really wasn't interested in anything that this young Korean woman had to say to me. This young Korean woman who was my passenger in Uber, my Uber passenger. But she did tell me that she was a world traveler. She wasn't an English teacher, but she was a world traveler. And she said that she had been to Ethiopia and that she would recommend that I go to Ethiopia. And that was a welcomed suggestion, because I was learning about Ethiopia and I had my sights set on Ethiopia when I was hired to teach in Saudi Arabia. Because from Saudi Arabia to get to Ethiopia, it's only like 4 or 5 hours, 4 or 5 hour flight. And so I wanted to do that, and I was willing to do that, and I appreciated her, for telling me that. All right. I just didn't really appreciate it or care for it that it was coming from a Korean woman. I was upset at that point. A young Korean woman just traveling the globe, and I wasn't. But anyway, that's what happened. Now, I was learning about everything black. I was learning about all the black stuff, right? I was on YouTube often enough, and here I was watching, this is a sort of a tangent here because we're gonna talk about Spain, all right? But Korean and Spanish, those are the two languages that I'm proficient in, all right? When I was learning, I began learning Spanish when I was a kid, and then Korean, I began learning for martial arts, and I began learning Korean when I was a kid, but I also started to, I really started to learn Korean when I lived in Korea and I was immersed in the country. And so, Spanish and Korean, those were my two languages, all right? In addition to traveling, I wanted to go to this place. This is Granada. This is a very bad image, and if you go to, it's a very bad picture of Granada, of Alhambra, the Alhambra at Granada. Granada is the name of the city in Spain. I watched this YouTube video starring Bettany Hughes, and as I watched this, I was learning about, there's Granada in southern Spain, I was learning about the history of the Moors. And really what was happening is my buddy Jumani, in about 2011 or 2012, Jumani shared with me Hidden Colors. And when I watched Hidden Colors, it opened up, it just, blew my mind away. There was an explosion of ideas and curiosity that occurred. And so I really wanted to travel the world even more so than I did when I was in Korea. All right. Because now I really wanted to see and connect the black and brown people of the globe. I had so much pride in myself. I said, man, I need to connect with this, all right? And the Moors of Spain and the Moorish tradition, 781 or 82 years, the Moors conquered Spain from 711 until 1492. Right? 781, 782 years, something like that. This was fascinating information. This was information that would motivate my learning of the Spanish language, because now I'm looking like, man, dude, the Spanish, Spanish is black, all right? I mean, the Spanish culture has been greatly influenced by Islam and by the Moors of Northern Africa. It's very distinct from Arabic, all right, the language that the Muslims spoke. But nevertheless, there was a connection there, and that connection made me eager, even more eager to study Spanish, right? And I was fascinated with this. And so I would watch this documentary, over and over again, just learning, just, enriching, myself through watching this documentary, because I wanted to one day go to Granada, Spain, and visit the Alhambra, because it was full of rich history. And thankfully I did. But this is one of the documentaries I watched on YouTube, and I would recommend that you watch as well. Great information, and it's a different perspective on Africa. If you go and listen to all of the other documentaries, you may not get the Moorish perspective or the importance of the Moors. And so that was just mind-blowing, mind-boggling at that time, just like, wow. So this is one documentary I watched. Another documentary I watched is this one. This is this is an hour into the documentary. The documentary is not called The Holy Land, but this is maybe one part of a documentary starring or hosted by Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. And I would watch this documentary to learn more about Ethiopia, all right? And everything that Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. was talking about here really impressed me. I'll tell you how I found this documentary. A few years before I watched this, check that out, Aksum, Eritrea, Lalibela, Gondar, all right? But I was watching Black in Latin America, Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr.'s documentaries about Latin America. And I was really excited and eager and motivated, okay? Motivated to travel to these countries, because they're speaking my language. Everything Black, that's me, all right? I want to know about that. I want to hear about that. That was a documentary. The Black in Latin America documentaries were produced, I think, in 2012. I love those documentaries, but I wanted to learn more from Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. And so when I found this documentary, I was doubly fascinated, because Ethiopia was just another country I wanted to travel to. I understand, wanderlust runs very deep, within me. And yes, I know I can't travel to all of the countries. Well, that's not true. I can, but I can't learn everything in the world. But what I do learn, I'm very passionate about, okay? And I'll try to learn as much as I can. And everything that I learn really enriches my life, as well. If you like learning as much as I do, then you know what I'm talking about. So Dr. Gates, or Skip Gates as he likes to be called, made this documentary like 20 years before his documentary in Latin America. He had already traveled to Africa and Ethiopia in this documentary. As you can see, the video quality is pretty poor, but I was watching this and I was fascinated, because there he was talking about Ethiopia. And the only time I had ever really heard about Ethiopia was in Lauryn Hill's lyric. I have the computer right here. I better just find it really quickly. You know what I'm talking about? Lauryn Hill said something about Lalibela. Let's just see. The Churches of Lalibela. In the Final Hour. The name of the song is Final Hour. And all right, there's the cover of the album, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. All right, and she said, where did she say it? The Churches of Lalibela. I don't see it. I should have. Okay, here it is. I found it. Sorry, I don't want to waste your time. Here it is. Still be in the Church of Lalibela, singing hymns a cappella. Okay, I had no idea what she was talking about when this song was released in. Do they have the year? 1998. I had no idea. Oh, and shout out to Marvin Lee, a brother from Los Angeles who traveled the globe. I saw his pictures on Facebook. He was there in Lalabella, and I was like, hey, I want to go there too. So he gave me the inspiration to travel to Lalabella, because all I had ever heard of it was, Lauryn Hill's music. A cool little connection that I had to Lauryn Hill when I was much younger, and I was trying to be an actor here in Los Angeles. I was auditioning for Sister Act 2. I had an agent and a manager, and they put me up. They said there are open auditions for a singing position, a singer for this movie, and why don't you go and do it? I can't sing. I guess they thought it was just a character building exercise for me, so they said just go and audition no matter what. Lauryn Hill got that part. All right, so that was like the little connection, a little 6 degrees of separation connection to Lauryn Hill, But anyway, so there I was learning about Ethiopia from Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. And I was fascinated with Lalibela and Ethiopia. Dr. Gates had already been, and then when I was there working in Saudi Arabia, I was talking to my colleagues in Saudi Arabia, and many of them were white men, and they were telling me about Ethiopia. And so I was shocked, and I was ready to travel now that I lived in Saudi Arabia and worked in Saudi Arabia, and I was earning more money. I was upset. I was shocked that they were telling me about Ethiopia, and I was also upset because I didn't want their impression of Ethiopia to, I didn't want to live vicariously through their impression, through their lives. In America, that's kind of all that we do, is we watch National Geographic and we watch all of these white people tell us about our world. I didn't like that. I wanted to be the explorer. I wanted to be the Jacques Cousteau. I wanted to be the Steve Irwin crocodile dude, and explore the globe. I mean, after all, it was Nipsey who said, he said, would you want to define, he said, who would you want to define you? Somebody else or you? And the answer to that question is me. I want to define myself. I want to have the experiences and see the world for myself. All right? It's my undertaking, not someone else's, okay? No, thank you. I'm not okay being in the passenger seat. I want to be in the driver's seat, okay? So my white colleagues in Saudi Arabia were telling me about Ethiopia. They included Seth, who had already been to Ethiopia, Gable, who had already been to Ethiopia, and TJ and Scott. All right, all of these guys were telling me about my Ethiopia, okay? And that wasn't cool with me. I was ready to go to Ethiopia. I was so fascinated with Ethiopia. I was so fascinated with the importance of Ethiopia to all Black people. The idea that Ethiopia is the only nation that was not colonized, the only African nation that went uncolonized by European powers, is fundamentally awe-inspiring, and it's proud. It's a source of pride for any African, any Black person the world over, because when you learn that story, you say, it's possible. We can overcome. And we look to the Ethiopians for that. And there are plenty of men throughout history who arrived at that same conclusion. When Italy attacked Ethiopia for the second time, there were African Americans, Black men here in America, who were trying to enlist in the war to fight on the side of Ethiopia, because they did not want Ethiopia to fall against the Italians. And so that was a profound connection in history, because I saw myself as wanting to make that connection with Ethiopia, because I was proud of Ethiopia's victory. And there were black men just like me years before, 70 years before, who said the same thing. We want to fight on Ethiopia's side. So it was a great source of pride. And so I wanted to go to Ethiopia. Now, what's interesting about Ethiopia is there's this connection with Tupac. All right? Yes, all right. Now, I was living in Saudi Arabia, and because Saudi Arabia and Islam is such a there's such a weight, there's such a gravity, such a pull to living in a country where religion is imbued in everything that you do. Can you imagine if you wake up one morning and you want to go and grab a bite to eat at McDonald's or wherever, and that store is closed because it's prayer time, and you have to wait 30 to 45 minutes before you can order anything at that restaurant? And you can't just go to another restaurant because that same restaurant is following the same rule. Essentially, countrywide, this is what's happening. That's the case. That's what it was like living in Saudi Arabia. And so when you are confronted with a religion like that, I'll give you another example. Whenever the Muslims spoke about the future, they always qualified their statement by saying, Inshallah, God willing, this will happen in the future. Can you imagine in America if we spoke in this manner? Oh, my friends and I, we're going to go to the mall, God willing. No one talks like that in America. There is such our experience and our relationship to God is very much cleaved, and two parts are separated. Yes, we have our experience of religion on Sundays, and we may even imbue a prayer, imbue religion when we eat or before we go to bed. But in Islam, it's all the time. It's in everything that you do at every moment. And for me, being in that environment, that was very impressive, and I was very impressionable, because I wasn't really set in my Christianity, because I wasn't a practicing Christian. So I was more interested in what Islam was all about. And so in that case, I was very much wayward and I could have converted to Islam while I was in Saudi Arabia, because I felt as if, hey, it's all around me, maybe this is the thing to do. That was really what was, happening to me. And I was curious about the religion. But what happened is, before any conversion, all right, I took a trip to Ethiopia. And when I took that trip to Ethiopia, then there were more connections that were made. And that trip to Ethiopia taught me to have pride in my Christianity, because Ethiopia, was one of the first, if not the first, nation founded under the Bible, under Christianity. Aksum, King Ezana, all right? And I saw black angels. I went to the churches and I saw angels, black faces, Afro sporting angels and Afro sporting saints, okay, and deities. And I thought, man, this is the religion that I want to be a part of, okay? And yeah, I was basically, to heck with Islam. I'm good. I was baptized a Christian, and I'm good with that. Look at these Ethiopian Orthodox Christians. I'm rocking with them, okay? Because it's all about blackness. Sure, you can find that there are white Jesus image images in Ethiopian churches today, but you can also find, you know, and brown people, and that was very empowering. It made such an impression on me that after my travel to Ethiopia, when I returned to Saudi Arabia, I was like, I'm cool with Islam because I have Christianity. There's no reason for me to switch sides or whatever. Now, in terms of switching sides, there really is no switching sides, because Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are all on the same side. They are all Abrahamic religions. And this is what I learned. This is what I discovered. You know, when I was a kid, we learned that song, Father Abraham. Here it is here. Father Abraham had many sons. Many sons had Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you. So let's just praise the Lord. Okay? That was a song that we learned when we were kids. And it made so much sense to me. It's like, oh, that's what they were talking about. And so any, you know, tension or religious tension, especially in America, you know, with September 11th, it was like the whole idea was, you know, the Muslims are bad. Well, if you were uneducated, if you were ignorant like me, then yeah, it was like, okay, well, I guess to be an American is to be like, we're against the Saudis. We are against, you know, the Afghans or what have you. But no, there was a process, there was an education that I was learning, and it really wasn't, it wasn't that simple. All right, I was gaining an appreciation for Islam, but I was also becoming fortified in my Christianity. So much so that I stand above those Mormons who approach you in those suits and ties and, hey, can we talk to you about Jesus? Like, yeah, sure, let's talk about Jesus, okay? And while we're at it, let's talk about Ethiopia, shall we? Okay? So my position and the amount of information, of historical information regarding to religion, you know, increased, and I was very appreciative of that. And so, yeah, I just didn't want to be a cliche. I thought it was very cliche for a black man to, you know, become a Muslim. Not saying that is cliche, but I'm saying that there's so many of us who convert to Islam, especially when we are in prison, that, you know, I didn't want to have the same story. Like, I was living in Saudi Arabia, which to me was much like living in a prison, because you have no access to women, music, movies, alcohol. All right, it's like everything was just, you know, stripped apart from you, and you really go insular into your who you are, you know, when you have no distractions really, and you really become one with God, I think, in those moments. So a man who is in prison, who is stripped away from all of those distractions and is left there, I mean, of course, yeah, I mean, there are drugs and other things that, you know, can get into prisons, but I'm just talking, you know, on the surface, okay? For the most part, if you're stripped from all of those influences and distractions, then yeah, you know, you find God. And very much so, when I was in Saudi Arabia, I found God too, but I found it not in Islam, but in Christianity, and so I was cool. And the cliche part is, like, Tupac made the song I Ain't Mad at You, and in that he was explaining how the brother who went to prison found Islam. And it was like, yeah, that's what the brothers do. They go to prison, they come out Muslim, okay? And then they start sharing their faith through dawah and trying to convert brothers and tell them, hey, don't do this, don't imbibe alcohol, stop messing with these women, you know, clean your soul, clean your mind and spirit, you know. And that's what Tupac was talking about. And when I heard that story, because I had heard that narrative or heard that story or seen that character in other ways. My father's friend, is a lot like that. Okay, he's from the East Coast, New York. Well, I kind of understood, a lot of brothers do that. And I was just like, I've got to find my path, right? I don't want to just, be like all of the other brothers or just go down. No, I didn't want that for myself. So, yeah, so Ethiopia was huge in my life because it really fortified who I am. I learned more about myself, and it gave me pride in who I am and who we all are as Black people. And throughout all of these experiences and everything that I've discussed, whether I traveled to Spain, whether I traveled to Ethiopia, Cuba, Korea, Japan, America, wherever I was, I always had these moments. I didn't mention it until now, but 10-9. Well, I mentioned it in the introduction, but 10-9, I did have my little moments where 10-9, crept in and surprised me. And there's that, as well as, and the clock reads 7:38 right now. I mean, it's not 10-9 per se, but hey, 7:39. I'm gonna end this video at 7:39 because 7 plus 3 equals 10, and then that 9, that makes it 10-9. So at 7:39, I'm gonna end this video. And that's really what I wanted to talk to you about. All of my travels, why I traveled so much. I hope I answered those questions, and I hope you enjoy listening. All right? Yes, it's 7:39. Peace.